Welcome to Module 2, Building an AI Automation Agency, where we're going to go in depth with every single piece of software that we outlined earlier. And we're going to go ahead and start off this module with Zapier and show everything that's fundamental about this platform when it comes to building out an AI automation agency. To start off, let's talk about pricing. So this platform ranges from free all the way up to a company level backend. If you are just starting out with AI automation and you want to get more comfortable with the platform, start with a free account, as you're going to be able to run some automations and really get an idea of the potential that you can do with Zapier. Now, there's a couple things I would like to point out. First being task associated with each plan. In this context, just so you know, tasks are the blocks or steps found within an automation. For example, a ChatGPT block, publish an Instagram post, create a tweet, that counts as one task. What's important for you to know is that tasks are going to be expended during a live automation and during a draft automation. That means when you're building out a automation in the backend and you expend a test, that counts as one task. Therefore, as you keep practicing and building out within the backend, you will be expending tasks, so there is going to be a high probability you'll probably need to upgrade to the next plan. When you upgrade your plan in Zapier, it has two main benefits. The first one being it'll have a different perk that's unlocked, and the second being the underlying cost of the Zapier task is going to be less. Now, in the context that you build out an AI automation with a recurring method where you have the AI automations in your backend and running it for a company, you're going to be able to get your Zapier tasks to very, very cheap levels. For your reference, let's go ahead and draw out a picture here. We're going to start with, let's just say you have a starter plan and the cost associated with a task in a starter plan. We're going to go ahead and put in 30 divided by 750 tasks. And as you see there, it's going to be around 4 cents per task. Now, assuming you're doing a lot of testing or you want to move up your plan for XYZ reason, let's go ahead and see how much it would cost for, let's say, 2,000 tasks at $73.50. All right, so we're going to go ahead and put 73.50 here. Divide that by 2,000. And there you go. We have each task being 0.03675 rather than the 4 cents. So as you scale and you get larger plans, the underlying cost of your AI automations will be less. And on top of that, the task per usage will be less. Now that you understand that, the next thing you need to understand about each plan is the perks you unlock as you see here. In the context of an AI automation agency, probably the more fundamental perks that you really need to have unlocked are going to be the multi-steps, filters, and formatters, and versions. The perks unlocked for a professional are still important, such as unlocking premium apps, but are not as fundamental as the perks that are unlocked in the first tier called Starter. Now, one big thing I'd like to point out is the first 3 tiers are going to be associated with an individual, while the last 2 tiers here are going to be more company oriented. So if you have multiple individuals, and as you see here, it's kind of outlined here with users. So we got 1, 1, 1, and then unlimited. I will say that the cost associated, as you see here, is a little bit more relative to the plan, even though you get the same thing, but just more users in the team version. Okay, so now that we understand the plans and the costs associated with running a Zapier account, let's go ahead and go over everything you need to know about the platform from start to finish. Now, when just looking at the UI here, you'll see your profile up here. You'll see the ability to contact sales up here, an ability to search your relative apps here. Usually we don't have this here. This is just a notification that they're doing a little bit of a user conference. Then we have our beta app here. Right here, you can see we have recent Zaps that you're working on. Then you got recommended Zaps from the community, and then just, different information down here relevant to something maybe you're interested in, such as joining the early access program. Okay, so now that we got an idea of our dashboard, let's go to get an understanding of all the different tabs that are found here, starting with Zaps. Now, one really cool thing about the Zapier platform is our ability to organize our Zaps due to the fact that as you grow, you're going to get a lot of different Zaps for a lot of different reasons. As you see here, that is why having the ability to create folders is so fundamental. So in the context of running an AI automation agency, here are the top folders I suggest you to create right off the bat. The first folder here, we can just call backend. Now, the purpose of this folder should be used for all AI automations or just automations in general that are utilized for your own business. Think of this as your business's backend in the sense of anything that you need to get automated and done at an expedited rate for your personal business. You should be building it out within this folder here. Just to give you an example here, if an individual went ahead and is subscribed to your newsletter or some type of marketing material, there is a really cool Zapier flow you could run where essentially anytime an individual provides their email for a marketing service, you can automatically add that to a Google Ads campaign group. There are plenty more automations that will come up over time when you're running your AI automation agency, but use the backend folder as a way just to organize every single Zapier that is associated with your business operations. The next folder you should be creating here is going to be called clients. Now, depending on how many clients you currently have, you should be basically organizing it off that. So if you have a lot of clients, you'd probably do some type of alphabetical system here. But if you're just starting out, you can typically just do a clients folder. And what's great about Zapier is we're able to create a folder within a folder. Hit these ellipses here, we can hit new folder here. And let's say the company is called Apples Co. You can simply do Apples Co. here. And then now we have a folder within a folder. We can click that, click on that. And as you see here, we're in clients, and then we're even further in clients, and it's Apples Co. So any AI automations that we may be working for on this company or already have built out, we can have placed in this folder for organizational purposes. Now, when you're running an AI automation agency, what you'll notice is a lot of times you may be experimenting or developing a automation that isn't necessarily associated with a client, but it's more for testing to see the capabilities of Zapier and AI on this platform. And essentially the purpose of beta is to create AI automations or automations in general that are pushing your limits to really understand the capabilities of this platform, and maybe for the ability to provide a specific service that a business had requested, but you're not sure if you're able to do yet. Perfect. Now you really know how to organize your Zaps once you start building them out for potential clients or for the back end of your business. Let's go ahead and just create a Zap and walk through the platform of the Zap. Now, if you're part of the early access program, you'll be able to change between classic editor and visual editor. There is no fundamental difference between the two. It's just a different UI for you to play around with. This being the classic editor. And then if we come over here, this being the visual editor. Personally, I find using the visual editor for more complex flows to be more effective. But for most things, you can still use the classic editor. Following this, as you see at the start of every single Zap, we have a little thing suggesting, inputting some text here and getting a possible AI output on what the flow could look like. Personally, I suggest not to use this feature as it can be misleading and take you down the wrong rabbit hole because of the fact that it isn't really been fine-tuned that right yet. Therefore, in the future, once this feature gets better, I could see it being very powerful in Zapier, but for right now, I would ignore this beta feature right here. Now, if you come up here, you'll see that you can just change the Zap here. So we can just say Zap name. That's where you're going to be able to change and organize your names here. If you come over here, you get a lot of the different options that are associated with each Zap. Starting with status. Status tells us whether the Zap is active or not, and if there's errors within the Zap. An outline is really cool here. This is going to give us basically how the entire Zap looks in a different format. If you come over to settings, we can add a description. We can add it to a specific folder. We can choose our time zone. Versions, if you have this high of a plan, allows you to roll back to specific versions of your Zap if you maybe go down a rabbit hole that isn't effective for what you're trying to do. History gives you a history of the Zap in every single one of these runs. This is going to be important when coming into cost and essentially, usage in the future. Details, you get a different type of UI look of the underlying Zap here with the overview, tastic usage, Zap runs, and change history. Clicking help gives you the ability to ask the Zapier community if you hit a wall, or you can check out the help center. And then finally, one of the newest features added to Zapier flows is the ability to add notes. Essentially, here's the context. If I add a scheduler here, it now allows me to add a note here. So maybe there's something I want to remember the next time I come back to this automation. Make sure to schedule on Thursday. So maybe I need to leave that note because the client told me that and I don't want to forget. Okay, I saved it. I got to go do something else right now. This is a good way just to save specific notes for specific blocks. Now that we understand the side tab here, we can go ahead and minimize it if we choose to do so. we now need to understand the actual just automation flow. So if we come over here to change, we have essentially the most important part of any flow, which is going to be your trigger. This is what's going to cause the entire automation to run. So it's very important that you know what you're doing when you set up your trigger, because this essentially is, like the first domino getting hit and all the other dominoes follow. With triggers, it really depends on the context of what you're trying to achieve. Some apps have the ability to do triggers and actions. Some apps you can only do actions. It really depends on the app type and what you plan on essentially doing. For example, I can't trigger off a path because a path is later in a flow and it's basing its decisions off previous data. For the purpose of showing you an automation, we're just going to go with the trigger of schedule. Also note that these are native apps built by Zapier, and there's 20 of them or over 20 of them. These are powerful. These are going to give you a lot of abilities when manipulating the underlying data that we get with AI. So it's good to know. I mean, some of the ones that stand out to me right off the bat, it's going to be filter, formatter, webhook, RSS, paths. Looping is a really cool feature. I mean, there's a ton of stuff we can do with the natively integrated apps from Zapier. Moving on from this though, we're gonna go ahead and just choose schedule. Now, when you choose the trigger, you'll be prompted with events. And essentially events are the different API calls that the app offers. What I mean by that is essentially, let's say, let me go ahead and choose a different app here. We're going to do Twitter. Essentially, when I hit the event here and you see liked my tweet, new follower of me, search and geo, all of these are formatted in a really nice UI that are very clear to us what it means. But in the context of what's happening in the back end, essentially Zapier is grabbing different API calls in order to do these type of tasks and grab this kind of data. So what that means is that some apps maybe have more trigger functions, but aren't readily available within Zapier. To clarify on that point, essentially what I mean is that there is some context where maybe an app has a very specific trigger. You don't find it here. You may need to do a webhook where essentially you set up a custom API call. If this sounds confusing, don't worry. We do an entire video found in this course of how to handle webhooks and ways to call for custom API calls. I mean, this is going to be huge when dealing with clients, as you're going to be able to give really custom solutions for whatever they're requesting. But knowing this, let's go ahead and jump back to scheduler and then essentially just walk through a trigger. We're going to say every day we want this automation to run. So we're going to do every day, trigger on weekends, yes. What time of day? Choose a time of day. The time of day is going to be set up on your settings of the time zone. So what do you have there? So for us, we're going to do noon. We're going to hit continue here. And let's go ahead and test this trigger. Perfect. So when you test a trigger and it comes back green like that, that means there was no errors in running the process here. Anytime you test a trigger, you're going to get a data record of whatever is relevant. So what I mean by that is essentially it's going to give you an example of what it would look like if this got triggered. As you see here, today is Saturday. Right now it's 5 p.m. where I'm at right now. And it just gives you an example of what the data would look like. So in this context, it wouldn't actually run because of the fact that I set it to run at noon. So just to make that clearer, and you get like a really cool trick right here if I added a filter. And because of the fact that this flow only runs at noon, it essentially, if I put this, if I put the time here and I put, exactly matches, it has to match noon. So we'll do 12. It's not going to be able to pass through this because of the fact that right now is 5. So, this wouldn't be triggered until tomorrow at noon. As you see here, the zap would not have continued. Really cool. Delete that. Come back over here. This will trigger regardless. And here's a really cool feature that Zapier just added, I think today or yesterday. But now this could be very powerful. You have the ability to actually modify a data record and maybe input something custom. Like I could put anything in here. I could put pizza, right? You can actually modify the underlying data that you plan on pushing through a flow, which is really cool, as this is going to allow you to do a little bit more testing and debugging with a potential app that maybe you can't get the readily available data for. Now that is a natively integrated app called Scheduler. Let's go ahead and change this to a third-party app like Twitter and look at a live data record here. So we're going to do an event here. We're going to say new follower. We're doing new follower of me. And then we have our account integrated here. We'll show you how to do that later in this tutorial when I continue here. I'm going to test this trigger, and then let's see who has followed me recently. And as you see here, we'll get multiple data points. So I click this, click this, click this. We have all the readily available information for that underlying data point. So what's great about this is that I know when I get a new follower on our Twitter account, I'll be able to access their name, their screen name, their location, their description. I mean, a ton of different information about that underlying data point that then we can use for the automation or integrate AI with. Okay, so you got everything you need to know about the trigger. Let's start talking about actions. And what better action to talk about other than ChatGPT? So we do ChatGPT here. When you continue, we're going to go ahead and do conversation. You're going to have your ChatGPT account integrated here. And what we're going to do is in our OpenAI tutorial, we'll show you how to integrate the OpenAI block and the ChatGPT block. So don't worry about that. We'll have that all set up in the next lesson of this course. But from here, we have a ton of different stuff we can do with a ChatGPT block. So let's go ahead and walk through step by step everything you need to know about when it comes to a ChatGPT action. If you're familiar with our videos or you've seen our content before, then you already know probably one of the most important parts of any ChatGPT block is going to be the user message. This is where we're going to do our prompt engineering. Now, one thing I want to point out before continuing this is there is a difference between regular ChatGPT that you have like the chatbot with and the API calls that we're doing within Zapier's platform. The major difference is the fact of privacy. So in the context of using the API like we're doing here, OpenAI has stated in their records that essentially they don't look at the information that's being communicated here due to the fact that some of the information may be sensitive because we're dealing with data from other platforms. Now, that being said, if you use ChatGPT the traditional way, they do have access to all those chats and they are grabbing that data and using it for their platform. So keep that in mind. Also, side note, that could be a really good selling point to a business. A business might be worried that, hey, AI looks great. We want to use OpenAI. We're worried because we don't want to give up our data within our backend because of the fact that OpenAI will use it. If you make it clear to them that, well, in the context that we're using the API, you don't actually have to worry about that and it is secured. Now we'll jump into prompt engineering and how to structure prompts in our next lesson here. But from here, let's go ahead and do the other variables here. So we have username. This isn't too important here. You don't have to worry too much about username. Assistant name, this isn't really important as well. This is more of like when the output incurs what the individual or the chatbot is called in its output. Now, the next variable point is assistant instructions. The way we kind of look at this is like the cherry on top of the sundae. It's not fundamental, but it still can really help with your prompt outputs. So what you can do here for context is, let's say you have an email or you're building out AI automation, which the purpose is to respond to customer messages. You could set the assistant instruction to, you are a customer representative of XYZ, company. Now we get into the next most important part about a ChatGPT block, which is going to be the model and the differences between 3.5 and 4. Think of 3.5 as more of grunt work. This is going to be the one that you're going to use for more of data restructuring or finding data within a block of text. So for example, you could do a formatting where essentially you want the major points found within an article or an email or so on. You could also use a 3.5 block in the context of finding sentiment analysis. Is this message positive? Is this message negative? Furthermore, we could use a 3.5 block to find a piece of data within a text. So find the email, find the phone number. Where was this individual located? Very, very simple and more specific fine-tuned tasks should be associated with 3.5, and more comprehension tasks should be associated with 4. Now you might be saying, what do you mean by comprehension in this context? I mean, when you use 4, you are wanting to use 4 like the end output is going to be read by a human, e.g. social media caption, email response, article generation, stuff that requires more comprehension and is going to be read at the end by a human rather than just grabbing a data point, using it later in a flow like you would with 3.5. You're going to want to use 4. Now your next question might be, okay, I understand the difference between 3.5 and 4. What are all these options? So what are all these other models? These other models are timestamp versions of the models. So for example, this model right here, GPT 3.5 Turbo 0613, that is the model from June 13th. Don't use it because of the fact that when they update it, you're going to lose that model and that model is not going to exist anymore. And this one, for example, is from March 1st, Come over here. This is from June 13th and so on. Now, the next question you might be asking yourself is, okay, I understand that that's from March 14th. That's from June 13th. What is the 16K? So let's say you're using GPT 3.5 Turbo, but you're inputting a lot of text. Let's say you're inputting, 10 pages of Google Doc text, and you're using 3.5 Turbo, and it's not really giving you effective answers. This is where you're going to up it up to 3.5 Turbo 16K, as 16K identifies that it can handle more data inputs. Now, to be clear with you, as models keep increasing and getting better, we're going to soon see a GPT 3.5 Turbo 32K that's going to be able to handle much more data. But for now, to handle a lot of data in the context of AI and Zapier, you're going to want to use a GPT 3.5 Turbo 16K. Now, the third most important thing about a ChatGPT block is going to be your memory key. This is going to ensure consistent outputs and consistent variety within your outputs. Now, what do I mean by that? Traditionally, when you're working with ChatGPT and you're just chatting with it and it's referencing context that was said before in the chat, think of that as the memory key here. You're basically creating a new chat with ChatGPT, but what if it's API? Here's why that's important. When you are structuring outputs with ChatGPT and you get one you really like, maybe you get a solid email body based off the contextual data you provided, but you don't have a memory key, that means that you're going to be playing Russian roulette every single time you run that flow again, because it doesn't know the consistent constraints that you want with its output. If I add a memory key, that means that that type of paragraph that was outputted before would be outputted again, but just with the different variables. What do I mean by that? Essentially, let's say you don't use a memory key and you get a really effective body and you say, okay, that's good, I'm gonna move on. In theory, next time you run that flow, there is a possibility that emojis could be added. There's a possibility that quotation marks could be added. There's a possibility that the body of that paragraph, 3 sentences out of the 6 are really bad and not what you wanted. If you don't have a memory key, this can occur. If you had a memory key and you like that first output, you'll get consistent outputs like that. Following this, you can get variety. This is huge when it comes to content creation. Now you can set it up where essentially let's say you're creating social media captions. You can add a parameter block that essentially says don't use previously said topics, and it won't do it. This is crazy because now essentially, because it has a memory key, it's able to understand, hey, we've already said this in the past. We don't want to say this again. Let's go ahead and find a new topic or a new way to say this caption. Okay, now moving on to the next input on a ChatGPT block, which is going to be your tokens. Tokens in this context is going to be how many you're willing to expend for a ChatGPT output. Tokens is how OpenAI charges you based off usage. So 1,000 tokens right now for 3.5 is like 0.002 cents. I believe 1,000 tokens for GPT-4 is around 0.06 cents. Knowing this, there's around a 2,900% difference in price between 3.5 and 4. Therefore, it is very important for you not only to continue to use 3.5, but use 4 in the correct context. Now, the last 2 inputs we have here are temperature and top P. These aren't too relevant when it comes to AI automation. All you really need to know about these is that if you lower temperature and top P, you're going to get more consistent but less creative answers. But if you heighten top P and temperature, you're going to get more creative answers, but some of those answers might be a little bit out of line of what you're looking for. Now that you understand the fundamentals between a ChatGPT block on Zapier, there is another OpenAI block you're going to want to use, and it's called OpenAI. So they went ahead and separated the two, and you're going to want to use ChatGPT AI with a ChatGPT block, and then all other functionalities of OpenAI with an OpenAI block. Essentially, this is what I mean by that. As you'll see here, we have a ton of different options when it comes to OpenAI and the ability for an action. We have the ability to do app extensions, check moderation, create transcripts, create translations, generate image, send prompt, API request, search embeddings. So OpenAI, use it more in the context of wanting to use Whisper API or DALL-E API. And just for your reference, Whisper API is what allows for translation and transcription, and DALL-E is for AI image generation. So for example, if I wanted to generate an image, I would just do generate image here. I would hit continue, choose my account, hit continue here again. And this is where I would input my DALL-E prompt here. If you're familiar with the other video, run like a dog on a beach. We did that in one of the original videos we've done here, Web Cafe AI. This allows you to choose how many image variations. Typically, in the context of a automation, you would choose one, and then obviously we would want to up it to the highest quality as possible. Hit continue, test action, and we would be able to get an image. And let's go ahead and just do that. So with test action here, it's going to provide us with a link. We can open a new tab and just see what it looks like. All right, we can go ahead and grab this. And as you see, we got our AI generated image. Obviously, I think as time goes on, we're going to get even higher quality images. It's going to get really cool when it comes to OpenAI and the possibility to create content with it. But for now, this is how you essentially grab that image from the underlying block. And because I showed you how to do that with DALL-E, I might as well show you what the output would look like for a ChatGPT prompt here. We're just going to say generate a social media caption for a dog company called Walking. And we're gonna go ahead and continue. That is not structured correct at all, so don't worry, we'll get into more prompt structuring in the next tutorial here. But for now, let's go ahead and see what our output would look like. So as you see here, this is what an output would look like. It's going to tell you the model. And this is where the role was coming in earlier. I was talking about, it's not too important. It tells you the content. And then you see here, this is the output right here. And like I said before, as you see, there'll be quotation marks. You know, obviously using a formatter block here, would be able to remove them. From here, you can come down here, which is probably the more important part about the output, which is going to be the tokens used and then the tokens remaining. You don't have to worry about tokens remaining. Rarely do you ever exceed that. For tokens used, though, that's going to be a great use case for understanding cost when you're finally done with AI automation and you want to run it on an Excel sheet. But for now, as you see here, this phrase and this input and output cost me around 27 GBT 3.5 tokens. So now you have an idea of a Zapier flow, you have an idea of a trigger, an action, and so on. Let's go ahead and jump into other parts of this platform. The next most relevant part about this platform for an AI automation agency is going to be your app section. So this is where you're going to be able to connect third-party apps that are prevalent with your flows. So for example, as you'll see in our next lesson here, we're going to connect ChatGPT, we're going to connect OpenAI, and essentially when you're starting off at an AI automation agency, you want to connect everything you can think that you'll use in that agency. So a good one obviously would just be putting out Google here, connecting your ads, your analytics, your Drive, your forms, your sheets, everything associated with Google, you'll probably use with AI automation or you'll use it to test with it. So it's always a good idea to connect all of the apps that you plan on using with your agency onto Zapier. So the next major tab you'll find in your Zapier account is going to be Zap History. This is going to be like an admin view of all the tasks run, all the tasks automated, and so on. As you see here, we have the task usage, and then we come over here. There are some Zaps that ran today. If I go over here to Zap Runs, it's going to show me all the Zaps run today, whether there was a Zap that was run, but it was filtered, and then if there was a success or not. On top of that, it's going to tell me how many tasks were burned for that specific run. So as you see here, we got a 3 task, 8 task, 1 task, and so on. You can also set it up so you can search by Zap, you can search by apps, you can search by folders. So maybe you have a specific client, they're doing a lot of usage. Now you can go ahead and input that client's name here, and you'll be able to get the amount of Zap task and Zap usage that you've had with that client for X amount of time. Now, one cool thing I want to show you about Zap usage and the ability to make it so it's even more automated and less manual input is if you come over here to history, you will see an option for auto replay. This is really important when you're dealing with a lot of Zaps because of the fact that not only are we dealing with AI, we're dealing with just Zapier as a platform. Sometimes you'll get errors that aren't even relevant. And what do I mean by relevant is there's nothing you could have done. The actual automation or AI automation is correct and everything you inputted should work. Sometimes there is just an error due to maybe ChatGPT running out of time. There might have been too much usage on the server. Maybe Zapier had an issue in their backend and you get an error, therefore causing the automation to stop prematurely. But if you keep auto replay on, this is going to allow it so essentially that the Zap that may have faulted as an error for no good reason will automatically rerun and run correctly this time. Now, the next tab here is going to be the Explore tab. This is going to allow you to essentially look through different examples of automations that have been built by other people. I will say a lot of these are very basic and surface level. They don't really get that complicated at all, but it's always a good idea to check it out because maybe you'll get an idea from a very basic automation you see here. In this, we have a Get Help section and then the current plan that your business is currently on. In the bottom left, this allows you to track how many tasks you've used up to this point. Now, another section that can be found on Zapier is tables. This is going to give you the ability to essentially create Excel sheets that have the ability to have AI automation or automation in general better integrated into it. The way you create a table is simply go to the tables tab, create a name for it. So we can put test here. We could import data that maybe we already have with a CSV, Airtable, or Google Sheets. And then we can choose a template. Right now, the only template available for us is a to-do list. Now, in its current context, the best use for a table is for more of lead management. Therefore, when maybe an individual inputs on a Google form or sends an email, it will automatically fill the tabs here with the relevant information. And stuff like this right here gives you the ability to basically set off an automation with that associated data. For now, all you really need to know about tables is it's going to be a very powerful tool in the future once we have more capabilities when it comes to data uploading and the ability to really manipulate what's going on here. Now, interfaces is a great feature for creating landing pages or chatbots for potential clients. As you see here, there is templates that are already provided here, such as a new client intake, a lead capture, a request portal, and so on. I see interfaces as a way to maybe expand the services you could offer to a potential business due to the fact that it seems like Zapier is beginning to bolster the abilities of this platform as it's still in its early stages, but there is still a lot of value you can grab here. Okay, so now let's understand when you look at a Zap run, what all this information means. Right off the bat, you'll see here the amount of tasks expended for usage. But as a rule of thumb, all you really need to know when it comes to task usage is that if there is 4 blocks, including the trigger, as you see here, you just have to -1. So the fact that there's 4 blocks here, -1, 3 tasks will be expended due to the fact that we have 1, 2, 3 tasks in total. The next most important part about looking at a Zap's run is you look at data in and out. This can help with debugging. For example, we can see here the data in here was this right here. And then the data out went ahead and restructured it and split it between the caption and the hashtags. You can see that with the ChatGPT as well, with the data in being the original user message, and then the data out being what the user message response was. Okay, we went ahead and covered everything you need to know about the Zapier platform and getting started with it. Now you have an ability to really build out AI automation flows, get a handle on this platform. We plan on jumping into this next lesson is everything you need to know about OpenAI. We're going to integrate ChatGPT and OpenAI with Zapier so we can start building out these flows. But without further ado, I'll see you in the next lesson.